Right, welcome back to the van build. Today I will be fully installing my 12 volt electric system. I've insulated here so I can start thinking about putting on some more ply onto the sides of the walls, starting to make it really feel like home. Well, hello. Right, so I've just taken my worktop off so you can see my solar isolator switch. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start connecting any of my other things up is run my wires into this so I can run them out, because this side is hard to get to once all other bits are starting to get connected. So Greg Virgo has a fantastic video on solar isolator switches, so I won't bore you too much. Essentially, I have a positive and a negative coming through from my solar panels, one of which I'm going to run through going through 7 and 8, which are on the higher raised sections, and then another one going through 5 and 6, which is the next one along. Right, so they are now secured in there, and then when I'm ready I can connect the other side to come out and down into my MPPT. I'll also show you just quickly that I've also got my batteries planted in place. So what I've done there, just to keep them from moving about, is I've used 2 beams either side to keep them in place, and I've used a ratchet strap just attached using some hooks either side to stop them from going up and down at all. Now, to aid me in the wiring stage, I've actually got a printout of Greg Virgo's actual wiring diagram for his 12 volt setup there, as well as on the back a scruffy version of my own appliances there, just to give me a rough idea. But yeah, I'll be following that as well as the actual Renogy MPPT guide, because that tells you exactly the order in which to be connecting your wires. So for example, the first thing is to connect the negatives of your battery to the battery charger, so on and so forth. So I'll be following that, and let's get on with those. Right, hopefully you can make sense of what you're seeing. We're going to start by connecting our 2 batteries together using our negative. And then I'll go from the auxiliary battery, which is our leisure batteries, to the negative terminal on the Renogy.
Wrong. This diagram makes me think.
So the next step of the process will be connecting our negative solar to our negative on the Renogy. The Renogy solar kit comes with some of the cables which have a ring connector and a loose bit of wire which will go into our solar cutoff. So it is quite a long cable. I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm going to let all the loose cable just sit, but I'm going to focus on just getting it in there in the first place. I've not put it tight just yet, but I need to make sure. So yeah, the only other thing that would go in there would be my van starter battery, which I've agreed I'm not putting in today. So that is in there, and that's done. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is connect one end of my positive. I bought myself 2, if I can find the other one, 2 medium red wires, and I was working as if I only had one. I had actually planned for this. Essentially my issue there was I need 1 medium to connect the 2 batteries together, but I also need now, because the positive is over here, for this to connect easily, is I need a longer one to get from this positive into this side of the fuse, which luckily I bought myself a second, I say long, but it's actually a medium length, but I only have shorts and mediums, so I call them shorts and longs. We should be able to connect our positives between the batteries. But this, that, and that can all be connected onto the same connection. So I'm connecting the other side of my battery, the cable that's going to run to my fuse to my thing, and also the cable that's going to go up to my fuse board. So the first stage, what I did was connected the 2 negative terminals of both my batteries together, and then the negative up to the negative on my MPPT, as well as the negative from the solar in onto the negative there. The next bit was to connect my 2 positive sections of the battery, so they're connected, and I also connected that positive up to my cutoff, which will go to my fuse board, and I've wired the cable that's going to run into this fuse, which will go up to my MPPT. So yeah, the next thing for me to do is take this positive that I've lined up here, and I'm going to take it under here. So this right here is a 40 amp fuse that I've put in as recommended online. Whoa. Okay, small crisis averted. Turns out I was just being a big baby, and obviously when I'm connecting a circuit there is going to be a spark. It was just bigger than I expected. When I did it just now, when I put it in properly, the spark was much smaller. But yes, we now have some lights showing that we have power from our battery. And the last thing to do would be connecting the positive of our solar.
So now, turn out. So now that.
Okay, so here's our case, and as you can see I left it in the off position, and this kind of, you might not be able to see it, it's a bit of like it's a circle with or a hexagon rather, with a triangle cut out the top, so it should match up like that and show my off position. And I've just got some screws in here. So this is kind of the moment of truth now, whether when I turn this switch to on, whether everything I've done with these cables is correct, and whether we get a symbol here. Oh, there we go. Oh, I was just about to say something, but actually we've got a little red light. I'm going to check the manual to see what that means. Okay, so supposedly our red light means we are bulk charging now that is on a constant red light, which essentially means we're using the full power to recharge our batteries. But that is fantastic news. It means we now have power for our system, so we can start wiring up our appliances. And actually we can wire our monitors and digital displays and things for the power. Right, so our fridge has now arrived. I chased that up yesterday, and turns out they were back in stock. So next day delivery, and it's in. We haven't wired that up yet. What we have done is briefly wired in our switch panel and one of our lights just to make sure that's all working. So I've just turned on the isolator switch there, so there's now power running to it. So you'll see up here our switch panel now has current coming through. We've got 13.8 volts coming in, and if I turn this switch, which is the one we've wired into, this light over here should turn on. So if I switch this on, it turns on. So happy days, that's all working. So what we're going to do next is finish cutting out our holes for our modules on here, and once that's fastened in, we can wire everything up, including our fan and our fridge and all those kind of bits, and then that'll all be in. All our 12 volt will be done, then it will just be a case of wiring up our inverter and consumer unit for our 230 volt power. Right, so I've just finished securing some of these clip brackets along the board, so that essentially once this is glued down to our actual desk, this will just be able to clip in and out. So it essentially means if for whatever reason I need to get behind it for any wiring or anything, I'm able to do so. So it should now to each of these. Okay, and now clip in like that, and then we'll run a bit of trim. Right, so we're back in the van, and the weather has taken a turn for the worst. It is absolutely chucking it down out there, but we will crack on. What I can be cracking on with at the moment is more electrical work. So what I'm going to be currently doing is working out my wiring for my consumer unit, and starting to wire that up. I've done a little diagram which I'll put on screen of my kind of wiring for the consumer unit coming from the inverter, and the next thing to do is to punch our holes in the top of our consumer unit. Now I was going to go get a hole saw to try and do this, but I have seen someone just take a hammer and a chisel and pop out these top sections. So I've got these nice little kind of glands or grommets to go in those holes, so I feel like that should be roughly the right size. We'll give it a go, we'll see what it's like. So yeah, we're gonna try pop those out and see if we can get some of these in. Just be very careful. Yeah. Right, so that sits in there quite nicely, and we can just use this ring on the underside, screw that on, and that'll keep that nice and tight and in place for our wires to sit very comfortably. I'm now going to flip it over and do the same on the other side. Right, so our consumer unit now has a gland in both the top and the bottom, so our power supply can come in through the top into our RCB, and our two lives for our sockets will come down out this bottom one. And I'll just quickly show you. So under here, so I know it's a bit dark, but you can see this wire, which you might remember is what I've ran all the way down the length of the van to the back corner, so I can have a single socket there, and that will go into the bottom of the consumer unit. And then I've also run this wire out the top here, which will be where my double socket goes here on this board, and that wire is down here as well, so I can wire those two in from the bottom. I've just rewired some of my appliances and relabeled them, because originally up on my board here the lights were over here, and when I'm in bed I want them to be as close as possible, so I just rewired them to this one. I've also started wiring up my consumer unit, so you'll see that I've wired this wire here, which is coming out and will go into a plug into the inverter. So I've just put in my live into the top of my RCD, my neutral in, and I've put my earth on the earth bar. And then I'm just going to wire in my other double gang socket and then attempt to do the single gang, which will be a little tricky because I haven't left myself much cable to do it with. Right, so we've put our wire in now for our 16 amp MCB. We had to change the wire going to our plug because the twin and earth cable I was using was too big to be wired into the plug socket, so my dad came and swapped that out for me. Big thanks to him while I was taking a break. And yeah, now I've got to put this in place and try and wire the other one because that is already over in the unit. Right, and there is my finished consumer unit. It is a little bit messy, but I've double checked everything. It's all pretty good. I had to undo my two gang, my 16 amp one, and pull the wires up, so I had room to do the ones behind for the 6 amp. So I shall wire up a socket, and I need to find an earthing point on the vehicle and earth the earth bus bar somewhere, probably somewhere down here on the chassis down there, and then I can attach the inverter to the batteries. Right, so we've hooked up the rest of the inverter, and that is our remote switch. So now, when you hit that, power's on, and then we have power in our sockets. So that gets plugged in, and you have to turn it on with the switch. Oh, you bash! Isn't it? And the last thing that me and my dad decided to do today was to sort out some of the ceiling and wall panels and really finish those off to make it start looking more like a home than just an empty shell. So we were measuring out some struts, and luckily we were attaching these to some pre-built holes in the ceiling, in the struts, using riv nuts and bolts again, and that was what we were going to fix our ply lining to. So you can see us here testing out the ply, making sure we have the right size, drilling some holes ready so that we can fix it properly. And then what we ended up doing is taking it down and scribing out some holes for where the lights were going to sit. So we pre-wired all our wiring, you can see the way goes there hanging down, and we've cut some holes with the hole saw so that they fit the light fixtures inside them. And you'll see me there just tucking one of the light fixtures in just to make sure that it goes in nice and tightly and has enough room for all the wiring up behind it. So we also fitted some of the side panels on and made sure it was all looking pretty squared off and looking good. And to be honest with you, that's pretty much where I put the camera down. So at this point I was pretty happy with all of the main components of the van, and it was more so about making it look a bit more polished, making it look a bit more homely. But I will be showing you that in the next video, where I do a kind of a full tour explaining all the extra bits that I did to the van